The Game 11 of the World Championship Match 2024 qualifies as a classic case of choking in chess, in my opinion. Sticking to the World Championship matches of recent times, let me remind you that Ding is not alone in being the victim of this curse. It is still fresh in my memory that another top athlete, Ian, shared this curse in Game 9 with his c5 move against Magnus in 2021. And the world number 1 Magnus himself shared this curse of choking in 2014 in Game 6 with his move King to d2. Although unfortunately for Anand, a probable momentary lapse in concentration didn't allow him to capitalize on Magnus's blunder then. Now, let's begin the study of the Game 11 between Gukesh and Ding. Gukesh brings Zucatot to the table. Reti, advanced variation of Reti, grabbing space on the queen side. Michel Gambit from Ding. Isn't the pawn structure quite reminiscent of the one in Benoni, the Son of Sorrow? And to Michel Gambit, Gukesh counters with another gambit called a reversed Blumenfeld Gambit. Just when the opening dust was settled, the world champion spends nearly 40 minutes on the clock for his next move, knight to f6, only to be greeted with an unexpected move in the very next turn from the challenger with pawn to a3. This opening choice is so impressive, as Gukesh's team has chosen something that as early as move number 4, they can make the world champion think for 40 minutes and still ensure that they can spring surprise in the next move, all the while keeping the positional balance. Clearly, at the opening stage, as we have seen since Game 1, the strategy is to simply trade a slight edge that Gukesh can press from mainstream positions in white to offbeat positions where there is no slight edge anymore, but positional balance is not compromised. And all of this is to take Ding out of his book early on. Hats off to the seconds of Gukesh for this consistent strategy. Now, objectively, the natural knight to c6 is slightly better, as it does more justice to the main principle, the activity. At this position, as you may see, the light squared bishop is enjoying more squares than knight on b8. So simply improve the worst piece out of the two. A sample variation can go like this, with knight to c6, pawn to b5 attacking the knight, pawn takes, bishop takes. Position is balanced with equal activity for both colors. However, Ding, after thinking for 22 minutes, chose to play bishop to g4 instead of knight to c6 after white's a3. This is still a good move, practically, hoping that Gukesh would not be so well prepared to this as compared to the principled knight to c6 there. Pawn takes, attacks the bishop, bishop takes, queen takes. And this positional error immediately throws away the advantage that he got from the opening preparation. A well-prepared opener slipping up in the same phase. How to explain it? Observe the time that Gukesh has taken to make this decision. Too less time, given that it's a classical game. Gukesh, of course, is a legendary chess teenager. This is not a skill issue, but a cognitive overload where decision-making speed has sacrificed the quality. We will dive into this shortly. A fantastic move from Ding, provoking white's b pawn to commit itself. Pawn to b5, and such a massive outpost for the knight. Black has seized the initiative. How did this happen? Let's go to the position where Gukesh chose to play pawn to d3, and instead pawn to c5 had to be played. Advancing the pawn to the very square so as not to give it up for black was the way to go. Pawn to a5 now is harmless, unlike in the game variation. For instance, bishop check, bishop is not hemmed by the pawn chain, and you have this lovely intermezzo instead of reacting to black's last move a5. And of course, very importantly, you didn't gift the c5 outpost for black thanks to your own pawn push to the very spot. Blocks the check, castles, pawn takes. At this position, let's examine the forcing variation first with pawn takes pawn. Pause the video and reflect on the continuation. I hope you took your time. Knight takes pawn, rook to c8, good outpost for knight. giving some room for the bishop. Bishop takes, pawn takes, bishop takes pawn, bishop takes pawn, bishop takes pawn again, and counterattack is the best defense. White is massively better here. I mean, look at the activity that white is enjoying. So black had to choose pawn to e5 instead of pawn takes on a3. Pawn takes pawn, rook takes, bishop takes, with a slight edge for white. So let's move back to the position where black is enjoying the massive outpost. Pawn to g3. Clearly, it has now dawned on Gukesh that he not only sabotaged his clever opening preparation by playing d3 instead of pawn to c5, but was also now tasked to come up with some developmental plan to make any sense of white's position, which explains why he burnt 1 full hour on his clock for this move. Just check, 1 hour 53 minutes before pawn to g3 and now just 52 minutes. Knight to c5. Fianchetto, very ambitious move from Ding, going for d3 already instead of king safety. e5 was much better. Castles, bishop to d6, a4, castles, development, rook to center. Now knight f2 d7, shutting it down, and black is fine. So going back to the game move, white castled. Black forks the queen and pawn. Queen pins the knight. Rook to center. Now defending the pawn, but this is dubious. Knight to d2 had to be played. Pawn to e6, giving room for the bishop. At this position, white has two variations to consider. Let's examine the first one, rook to b1, threatening to overload the queen with b pawn push. And black's own b6 here fails to bishop to c6 check. So queen should go to b8, unpinning the knight. b6, a4, centralizing the knight. Knight takes the pawn. Queen to d2, knight takes bishop. Queen takes bishop e7 with an equal position. So another variation to consider is pawn to b6 directly instead of rook to b1. Then queen b8, unpinning the knight. Rook to b1, knight takes, queen takes, rook takes, knight to b3, knight takes bishop, rook takes, and with an equal position. So to rook to b1, rook to d1, Ding played pawn to g6, which is dubious. This is black's natural looking plan with g6 and h5 to trouble the queen, isn't it? But white gets to equalize immediately with pawn to a4, and hence this g6 h5 plan is dubious. Ding should have played pawn to e6 rather, giving room for the bishop. b6, queen to d6, knight to d2 development, knight takes pawn, queen takes, bishop takes, rook to b1, knight takes, rook takes, connecting the rooks, and black is better here with an extra pawn. So to g6, Gukesh reacted with a4, a fine move, vacating the square for bishop and knight. Pawn to h5, b6 attacking the queen. Bishop to a3 was an interesting alternative to b6. Let's examine that. Pause the video to understand how. Well, this intermezzo doesn't allow black to play queen to b8, meaning it doesn't receive a helping hand from the rook. Thus, the e5 knight continues to be pinned, making the d3 pawn safe, unlike in direct b6 variation, isn't it? Bishop to h6, attacking the queen. b6, counterattack is the best defense. Queen to b8, queen h4, knight takes pawn, rook takes, queen takes, knight takes with an equal position. So going back to the game move, b6, and Ding played queen to d6. Instead, queen to b8 was better. Once again, the retreating move was not an easy one to find, I think. If you play bishop a3 now, this is dubious. because knight is not pinned anymore, so it can grab the d3 pawn. So that is why queen to d2 should have been played at this point. And Gukesh had to find this incredibly complicated variation, starting with the sacrifice of the exchange, because knight to b3 fork the major pieces. Queen to b2, knight takes, bishop f4, intermezzo, knight to d2, a1 knight is running nowhere. Rook takes with an equal position. This was not easy to find. So let's go back to the game move. Queen to d6, and Gukesh pinned the knight. Counterattack is the best defense, ensuring its queen gets a fantastic square. Queen takes, queen to the center, knight develops. Queen to e2 is more accurate than this retreating move from the knight. Let's examine. Queen to e2. Queen takes pawn, hits the queen with the tempo. Now queen to d8, retreats. Rook takes pawn, rook takes, bishop takes knight with check. Rook to b1, castling, unpinning the rook while finally trying to bring the other rook to play. But this is already very late, because knight to b5, pin or not, the d7 rook is trapped. We can now see why knight on a3 was well placed and shouldn't have been retreated, unlike in the game. Queen to b6. After knight retreats to c2 in the game, queen takes on b6. So developing the rook with a tempo. Maximum activity, plus vacating the square for the other rook to ensure rook doubling on b5. Now Ding be like, Gukesh, you must be kidding me. I thought the square a1 was rook's own country. Do you really have time to maneuver your knight in that grand lethargic fashion? And Ding sees the clock. Oh wait, I myself am running out of time. Objectively, rook d to b1 was the best move instead of knight to a1 to go by the position. But Gukesh felt that the crazy game move had the potential to add more pressure on opponent's time, and it did. Ding starts panicking, and instead of playing rook to d6 followed by rook to e6 asking questions to white queen, plays the passive rook to b8. Knight to b3, dubious. Once again rook to d6 was the way to go. Wow, what a grand journey of that knight. Knight b1 to a3 to c2 to a1 to b3 to c5, finally landing in opponent's lap. This suits the occasion, as it is so much in line with its director's journey as well. Gukesh, from his humble beginnings to nearly the very top of the ladder in the chess world in a short span of time. Rook e7, dubious. This natural scaling up the pressure is in reality scaling down the tempo. Let's examine. The good move was knight takes b7 instead of rook d to b1, because if knight b4, now queen e1, bishop to f8, knight takes, rook takes, pawn takes, queen takes. The point behind why the game move rook d to b1 was dubious 4 moves ago. Saving that crucial tempo can give you this winning edge on the queen side, since dark knight couldn't touch the d3 pawn at all, as rook was on d1 all this time and not on b1. So queen to b6, queen takes knight. The extra pawn and connected passers on b and c files white is pressing. So let's go back to the game move. Black could have played knight to b4. You see, now knight takes b7, bishop f8. Note that White doesn't have time to play queen to e1 to control the critical diagonal now, unlike in the similar variation that we just saw, but with the saved tempo, right? I mean, when white didn't waste his move with rook d to b1 and instead went directly with knight takes on b7. So rook to b3. If queen e1, then it simply fails to knight takes pawn with an equal position. So rook to b3, defending the d3 pawn. e5, rook takes pawn, rook takes knight, queen takes rook, queen takes knight, queen takes queen, rook takes queen, with a negligible edge for white, thanks to the disconnected pawns on A and C files, compared to having them connected on B and C files, which we saw earlier. It is super difficult to calculate the two critical variations all the way till here to understand the difference between the two. Let's go back to the game move. At this point, when Ding had 7+ minutes, which was ample time to see a simple tactic, there happened a phenomena called choking. King Ding choking under severe mental pressure to continue performing. Ding is an expert chess player, but he suddenly misses an elementary tactic under severe psychological pressure. Soon after making the blunder, that is the moment pressure to make the move is off from his hands, he realizes his blunder, which we can see in the official video footage clearly, thus providing us the evidence that it is a classic case of choking, where an expert scales down to a less experienced player or sometimes even to a novice momentarily and goes back to his expert self immediately after the pressure eases in the brain, switching from fluent, proficient neural pathway to a novice neural pathway and back to fluent neural pathway in the brain. This is a common curse across domains, but is strongly pronounced in sports at the highest level to the top athletes. I'll cite two more choking examples across sports. Number one, what happened to the great white shark of golf at the Masters Augusta 1996? Second one, how do you explain the performance of South Africa's cricket team at World Cups in the big games at the crucial moments? There are a lot like that if you want to do your own research on choking. In the beginning of the video, I gave you two more examples of this phenomena in chess at the very top in recent times. But this can happen to even decent club players, not just top athletes. Feel free to share in the comment section if you have become the victim of choking in your own tournament practice. And Gukesh immediately grabs the pace, curtains to a dramatic finish. I am Aruna from Aruna Chess Academy. If you found my chess content valuable and would like to stay updated with my latest videos, feel free to subscribe to my channel. I truly appreciate your time. Thank you.